Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Howdy, sir.
Right on time, Scott. Good time.
We almost locked you out.
Sorry, I see that 5 o'clock and we're ready.
Oh, you were half a minute late.
Right, it's that rush hour.
Or we were half a minute early.
Okay,
That
so
rush hour.
Mr. Arcuri? Mr. Bova?
Here.
Mr. Brodsky? Mr. Coyne?
Present.
Mr. D'Elia?
Here.
Mark Ford? Mitch Ford? Mr. Mahardy? Mr. Matullo?
Here.
Ms. Chesney?
Here,
Mr. Williams?
Here.
And Mr. Zweig?
Here.
Thank you. We have the April 21 draft minutes in the packet. Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Is there a second? Thank you. Any corrections, deletions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next item on our agenda, approval quarterly investment statement, fourth quarter ending March 31st, 2014.
Yes. This is the fourth quarter, the end of the fiscal year. This is a report that we provide to our auditors. But part of the Public Authorities Act, we're required to provide you with a statement that shows the balances, any fees, and any income that was recorded during the year. So this is showing by quarter the balances that are in the different trust funds that are with the Bank of New York, associated fees, and the interest that we earned. Primarily, the interest that we earned is off of CDs that we have invested in. Most treasuries these days are close to zero, so not much going on there.
Any questions for Jim on this? Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion.
Second? Second. Any further discussion or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next item is a discussion regarding fees for service termination. Is that you, Pat?
It will be. Mitch chairs that committee. Operations Committee met. There were 3 members, Mr. Bova, Mr. Matolo, and Mr. Ford, Mitch Ford. They were discussing a meeting they had, Mitch Bruce. They were discussing a meeting they had with the mayor, which I think also Bruce was at, Bruce. So we went over a range of topics at the operations meeting, but the one thing that did get voted on and came back to this board for consideration was a request that came from the city to waive the fee that we charge to terminate services. And what I mean by that is if, for example, a house is foreclosed and later abandoned and the city wants to tear it down, or if there's a house fire and the house is deemed dangerous and it needs to come down, we generally try to kill the service at the main, under most circumstances at least, so that there isn't a service stub sitting there leaking. If it's a copper pipe and the curb box is fairly operable, there are times when we leave it there, just in case there's going to be another house built or a new owner is going to be moving in. We don't have to cut the street open again. But essentially, the fee that we charge right now is $1,400, and that is to cover the cost of us sending a crew, digging in the street, disconnecting the service pipe from the main, and then having to restore the street. For background information, I did some research with our staff.
I'm sorry,
and-
Pat, and that's an actual cost. That's we're not
Yes,
just
correct. That's
coming
to
up with a
recoup
fee.
our cost.
Yeah.
Now, we are in the midst right now of looking at all of our fees and reevaluating them because some of these haven't changed in a number of years. This one probably hasn't changed in about 6 years. So Dick Goodney and the engineering staff is working with our maintenance department and our accounting department to look at all of our fees. The actual cost to do this in most cases is substantially higher than $1,400 at this point in time. It's probably, Dick, would you say around $2,000 or so?
Yeah, that'd be an average.
An average. As you can see, we went back over the last 3 fiscal years. Last year was a pretty busy year. The year before, not so much. The year before that was almost no activity. Again, though, some of these we don't always cut and at the main and dig in the street. Some of them we do leave the stub if we think there's a reason why they're going to redevelop the parcel, and if it's a fairly newer copper service that we think is going to be less prone to leaking, and there's a good curb box there. At times we shut it off at the curb box, in which case we don't charge that fee. So to look at the potential revenue loss of waiving it, This gives us maybe an indication, although these 3 years were not considered average compared to each other by any means. One alternative that we discussed, at least in-house, and this is just coming from staff, not necessarily from the committee, was maybe the idea of a compromise where we wouldn't charge them to dig it at the street. We would backfill it, we'd cut the service, backfill it, do a temporary repair, and then maybe the city could take the cut over and do the permanent repair after that. Because as you'll note at the bottom here, around 40%, perhaps a little higher, of that total cost is us having to come back, sometimes 6-8 months later, depending on when we do it, with the contractor, having to pour fresh concrete, have the whole thing repaved, square cut, etc. So we're coming in and we're killing the service, but then it goes on a list, and then we have a lot of follow-up cost to actually have the street restored to good condition after that. I'm just kind of suggesting if you don't want to waive the entire fee and eat that entire cost for municipalities, one compromise could be to split the difference. But obviously that's your choice. As far as outside the city goes, from what I'm understanding with our staff, most of the municipalities outside the city hire a contractor to do these demolitions, and the contractor actually does that work. They'll excavate it, and we'll just come and disconnect it from the main while they're there, but essentially the contractor being paid by the municipality would incur all those costs. So we really don't have a lot of situation where we charge that $1,400 fee to anybody besides the city of Utica. So this really is affecting predominantly the city. If you have any questions on it, I'll try to answer those as well.
Bruce?
The question I have is not necessarily, there's two sets of charges here that I'm interested in getting more information on. The first set of charges are what we charge municipalities for the work that we do. The second set of charges is what do municipalities charge us for work that they do that we have to pay. I think I'd like to see some sort of analysis there. I'm similar to what the board did related to the use of recreational water within the municipalities. I'd like to see if there was a way that we can minimize the costs in both ways. That's what I said at that meeting, and that's what I believe, is that I think that there's a need to look at that. I don't know what the costs are both ways, and I don't know what the fiscal impact is specifically to any particular municipality. But I am interested in seeing if we can mitigate or spread around the costs to the larger user base related to intermunicipal type of work, and that's what I'm interested in. I'm not specifically interested in this as much as it is one fee with respect to what we might charge a municipality. But I'd also like to know what's going on the other way, and there may be a trade there as well. I don't know. I honestly don't know, which is why I'd like to find out. So that's my interest. Is
Off the top of my head, unless Dick or Jim, you can think of something. I'm not sure there's a whole lot that other municipalities do for us that we pay them to do. I can't think of any, to be honest with you. But we can research it and find out.
There's a couple easements we pay.
Okay.
Things like that, kind of rent, if you want to call it that.
So I'd like to see that before.
Well, we can take a look
Yeah,
at this.
and I'm hesitant to call this a fee. It's an actual cost to us. All we're doing is recouping the cost. We're not just, doing something that's $100 to us in cost.
Sure.
And saying, oh, we're taking another $1,200 of your tax dollars back over. This is an actual cost to us. So if there's a way to balance it out, yeah, I'd like to hear what, along the lines of what Bruce is talking about. And I'd like more time to think about and analyze this actual cost stuff. I do like your idea of putting the curb, or the cut back on the city if they're willing to take that and we do our end of it. That's a give and take situation. Then they can go back in 8 months if there's a problem with the surface. I think that's a good start. So maybe we
So is there a
can check
motion
that
on
out
the
and bring it back next month. Is that good enough?
Yeah, this is me, but it's not my committee.
Well, Mitch is the chair, he's not here, but Frank and Denny were there.
I just want to get all the
Do
information.
you
on the
want to
table.
bring this back in August? Sure. We can do more research? Okay.
I don't think, I'm not sure what the mayor was available, that was, knew at the time. I mean, we've already taken a major step related to the cost of water and provided a 50% discount right off the top, which I think was appropriate, because I do believe that we're private, but we are still a municipal service group, and I think there's something we should look at with respect to what we charge.
Sure.
You know, because it is shared by everyone rather than just moving the money around. But we also need to be fair, and we also need to be able to cover our expenses, and if there's a way of offsetting some things, we want to know that as well. So
Yeah.
just like to get a little bit
Okay.
more information, but I am
Well-
sympathetic to it, and I would like to do something.
All right.
I just don't know what that is.
Well, we'll find out as much as we can to look at the big
Well, we
picture.
should be looking at this in conjunction to what we've done with water for municipal use as well. These are all cost us.
They're
Yeah,
costs.
and, I had
And
mentioned.
contributions back to our communities.
Well, and I mentioned at the committee meeting as well that, we've spent several $1 million on meters over the last 10 or 12 years. And whenever we replace meters, both city sewer and county sewer get that revenue recapture. So, it's an investment to protect our revenue stream, and we've never asked them to share in those costs.
Correct.
So just another, and I'm not sure if others have thought about that very much, but it probably is a pretty substantial contribution.
Okay, so we'll.
Okay,
send
we'll do
that
more
to
research.
operations
Very
and,
good.
See what they come up with, you come up with for next month.
Very good.
Committee reports, Dick, was there something you wanted to highlight? The capital
The
project?
report was included on capital project progress. Next capital meeting, committee probably in August, proposals from the bank will have that.
Item 6.
Did I skip? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say Steve home early.
Discussion for fees, I went down one, sorry, Steve. Backing up a second.
We wanted to give the board an update on where we're at with the automated meter reading, and also since we do have folks that sometimes watch our meetings on TV, we thought it'd be a good vehicle to get a little more information out about what some folks can expect when we show up to do this work and what it's about.
I'm going to be real general about the project. If you have any questions as I go along, please ask it, or at the end, maybe I get more in depth if there's something particular you want to know. But just to get started, give you a little background for some of the board members that weren't here when we started doing this. Automated metering infrastructure is AMI. 10 plus years ago when I started, some of the things Pat and I identified, as well as some of the other departments, is the difficulty of getting readings, especially the technology that we had at the time. A lot of them were visually read inside houses and facilities in which we struggled to get in. Sometimes people had to wait for years. Since that time, and as Pat alluded to, we've done a large meter update, and we've gone to an electronic system, which we have now. We get a touchpad on the side of your house, you put a gun to it, it gives you the read. That's how we get our read. At that time, there was, 10 plus years ago, there was a drive-by system where you would put a MIU or reading device on the side of the house. You drive a vehicle around the neighborhood, it would collect the reads. Similar, National Grid, I think, still uses it. It's technology still widely used. But at that time, I think it was a $10, $12 million project, if I recall correctly, and it was just the cost versus the benefit really just wasn't what the board wanted to do. We jumped 8 years or so later. Not only has that technology and technology in general, the costs come down, but it's also gotten much better to where we have a fixed network system. So even though we had to wait the 8-10 years, we jumped a whole generation of technology. So not only, like I said, it's much better, but it's much cheaper. So approximately 2 years ago, Pat and I came with a business case. You allowed us to investigate it further, and we went ahead and started going ahead, and we had a $5.5 million project, which we hope to even be more efficient at that. So what does $5.5 million buy you today? Our system, what it's going to consist of when finished, will have 14 collectors/towers, combination of solar and AC powered throughout various
And
properties.
Steve, I'm sorry to interrupt. Most of those are on water tanks, so, and other facilities that we have.
Yeah, I think they're all on our facilities.
So-
They're able to,
We're not erecting new towers like a cell tower, so it's not like we're asking to put something in a neighborhood that people may object to.
well, in some cases, we had to put some poles, telephone poles up, not necessarily a tower.
For AC power, but
But also it includes 39,000 MIUs for, again, meter interface units at every meter location registered. and then the monitoring and reporting softwares. Benefits of the AMI fixed base system: we collect 24 hourly reads daily. Every day we'll get hourly reads from every MIU that's out there. So what is that? Just some quick things that gives you accurate and timely reads, assist in determining leaks and other issues at homes, assist customers, customer service and billing issues concerned. It has a whole large list of engineering assistance that you can utilize all this data for. But again, I'm just going to scratch the surface right now. Unique thing about our service area, and I think I stole this from somebody who has, I think these are all hydrants in the system, but I like the picture. The uniqueness of our area is that, as you can see, we got some peaks and valleys and stuff around, so that's what really required us to go with the 14 collector units. If we were perhaps more square or something, yeah, would probably help out. But the neat thing about it, and I'll just touch on it real quick, but this could be another meeting, is that Westmoreland, we're doing a project in Westmoreland right now. And the nice thing about it, we have a tower, we can catch all their meters in Westmoreland, so we're installing and doing billing for them. So it's a service we were able to provide to our neighbors. So if and when we do expand, we're already set up to take on those areas. Just to show you a typical tower, or I should say collector situation. There's actually two different ones. It's, like I said, AC and solar, but I'm going to give you three different pictures. This is a unit that we have at Wilcox. Again, this is the collector. It's about the size of a small suitcase. This is a solar collector, and then it runs up to the side of the tank to an antenna, as Pat mentioned earlier. This one is in the county building itself. This is an indoor unit that's AC run, and again, it goes out to a device similar to that. This one, we did have to put a telephone pole for the solar panel, the collector, and then the antenna on top of that. As I said, this is what your current, hopefully you have this on the side of your house. We go for this to a unit such as this. This is the MIU. This does the transmitting to the collector and collects all the reads. It's actually much nicer. It does even has a nicer color. It kind of hides better. I don't know too many people with black houses, but even though it is a little bit bigger, it isn't as intrusive as you'd think. So project outline. At the get-go, we actually started, my actual date was May 28th of 13, so we just passed our 1-year mark. At that time, we had approximately 6,000 residential and commercial meters to update and install the MIUs. Retrofit 30,000 plus or minus registered with MIUs, installed 14 collectors and towers, and the estimated timeline I had was 3 years. Our progress as of today, or actually a year after, we've replaced 2,200 meters and installed the MIUs, retrofitted 6,300, so in total, 8,500 meters are now being read on a daily basis. A little bit behind what I wanted to be at, but nevertheless very happy with our progress. We had some things that interrupted it, and weather and getting the collectors up was a little bit of a challenge towards the winter months. And also, too, the nice thing was is the Westmoreland project. It was something we couldn't say no to, so that's kind of slowed us down a little bit, but nevertheless, it's going quite well. At the year mark, we had 11 towers and collectors up. I'm happy to say that I think this week the 3 remaining should be up and running, and we should be pretty much all set. There is one tower, actually the Wilcox one, the picture I showed you, we're going to change from solar to AC power. That's going to hopefully be the following week. That will give us even more power at that location, and more strength. I'm going to give you a couple quick screens here. This is what customer service can see now. Actually, this particular one is for myself or IT. You can't see it down here, but these are each collector. It tells you that they're up and running and how many how many reads they took within a 24-hour period. If one of these were to go down, an email automatically goes out to IT and they know it immediately, so that we could either generate a crew to go out there and find out what's going on. Other than that, it's your system health. You get that every morning when you log in. Typical account, as I always use mine. The neat thing about this, you can see I filled my pool in May, and you can see the reads on a daily basis. Excuse me, the hourly basis as to what they were. and customer service has us at their fingertips now. The neat thing too, I just want to touch on this quick. We were pleasantly surprised at the reception that we got from these towers, and right here it tells you what tower that read came from. In my house on Deerfield Hill, I could hit our Cascade Tank, Deer Trail, Frankfurt, the County Building, Wilcox Tank, Smith Hill, and Pleasant View. So basically, I've got 7 of the 11 towers that we currently have that can actually see my house. So the coverage is very good. Overlapping in the event that something were to fail on us, so we won't miss reads.
What is the radius that every tower covers? Is there any specific?
There
mileage?
is, they did what they call a propagation study, where they figured where the radius would be that tower could collect. But again, it's not a science, so that they estimated it. There's things like topography, like we'll say Pleasant View is on the top of Deerfield Hill. So because of that location, we can actually see as far as Clark's Mills in that particular tower. Some of the lower lying ones might not have that reach. They claim that foliage, vehicles, bridges, buildings could cause a reduction in that. We really found very minimal. Actually, in a lot of cases, when we have challenges of getting the wiring outside the house, as you would with a touchpad, you would need to with a touchpad. We have, in some cases, been able to put this up into the rafters and get a very good signal. So that's a huge benefit, especially when you have slab houses or things like that.
These go on the houses, you said?
These will go on the house.
What's
This
the-
particular one does.
What's the difference? Oh.
This is our current technology. And now this is what we're going to.
Okay.
That black pad, a meter reader walks up to and touches a probe to it from the outside of the
Yeah.
house.
So
But the
that's-
wires come from the meter to the pad. So all they have to do when they retrofit is take the pad off
Yes.
and connect the wires to the MIU, the meter interface unit, and put it in the same spot the pad was at.
I got you.
And then they don't have to go there anymore.
So that's a very good point to bring up too. As we did our meter replacement, we always made sure that they were upgradable to this type of technology, so
Yeah.
that no money was wasted. And just like Pat said, this is a 2-wire system. The meters are a 3-wire system. At the time that I came here, I was making sure that we were installing all 3 wires, because that's what these devices need. And it's already outside in most cases and wired up, so saving us the time to have to rewire them. It's a very good point, Pat.
What percentage of the accounts will be able to be hit by multiple towers in the end? Do we have an idea?
They designed the propagation study to have redundancy and overlapping on the radius of each.
For 100% of
So
our accounts?
most of them will have redundancy. Some of them may or may not. It depends on the final installation for the collectors.
90%?
Yes,
Yeah.
I believe
Yeah.
they did this study for 95%. If a tower were to go down, 95% of the reads should still be able to be picked up by another tower.
Right now, that's our minimum
Yeah.
goal?
Our goal is 99.3, I think, is to be fully implemented. But as far as redundancy,
Right, redundancy, 95%.
95% should be heard by more than one collector. In most cases, we're getting better distance and reception than was promised,
yes.
and the reliability's been pretty good.
But right now, we're still looking at 95%. At some point, we'll know what that percent is.
Right, and in areas where if we're having difficulty at some point, we can always decide if we want to invest in another collector to strengthen the field, we could do that. Particularly if there's any expansion in the system, that might drive that as well. There's just some low-lying areas that were a little bit more difficult to get total redundancy.
Yeah, but when I get done, I can go back and I can show you some of the places, like in Holland Patton, where you were more sparse, is perhaps more of our challenging areas versus putting several towers for some of them may not be advantageous to us. But again, furthermore, we could do is drilling down into my account itself. You can see hour by hour the water usage and the event. And this is really helpful because in cases customers don't realize that when they go to work, their kids are doing stuff, or actually one of a real quick story that when we were looking at some of these networks, there was one of the salespeople were talking about how the father had a vacation home, and he says, I haven't been there in months, something's wrong, you billed me wrong. And come to find out, to pick the weekend and found out his kids had a party there. So, and that's the type of things that we were really looking for the system to do as we get fully implemented, is that we can text you, email you when there's water usage, and you don't expect it. If you're a snowbird that you go into Florida and you want to make sure that your house is being protected, we will have that capability.
Is there an alert system?
Yes.
That looks for certain characteristics?
You see there's only water use in certain hours there. If there was water use in all those hourly increments, it would probably be a lot lower if it was a leak, but if it sees continuous usage, it'll flag it, it'll send us a report.
It sends a report
Yeah.
by individual accounts.
Yeah, it'll send to us a list of all accounts that are showing continuous usage, and then we can look at it, and we can alert somebody and say, there's something going on in the middle of the night, because we're seeing water right through the middle of the night, you probably have a toilet leaking or
Could
something
there
else.
be
There-
an alert system built in that would allow us to provide us a paid service to an account? So I'm thinking particularly landlords.
Yeah.
Where we might be able to say for $5 a month or something, we could
Yeah.
provide you a report that shows you certain types of usage at your account.
We'd be able to do that, and with the portals that we're contemplating, we'll be able to allow customers to log in to see all kinds of things in their own accounts. But also, we'll be able to have these alerts get sent by text, by cell, by email to customers. We could even do dial messages to them. So we're gonna be devising a lot of ways that this information can be shot out to people. Whether we charge for that or not is something, we haven't talked about yet,
Well, I
just
think
because we
should
haven't
keep
been able to
that
do
in
it yet.
mind, the value add.
Oh, yeah.
And the value add has value.
Mhm.
And we shouldn't, there's some things I think we should provide as a service.
Mhm.
There are other things that are value add that should be provided at cost.
Mhm.
At least I think so.
When do you anticipate this could be implemented?
Yeah, my estimation is 3 years. Like I said, we are a little bit behind, but
And-
as we get more implemented, our thinking is that we'll have less and less readers out in the field, and they'll be
Yeah.
installing instead. So hopefully we can catch up as time goes on.
It'll pick up speed as we get in
I
there.
reevaluate it every 6 months to see where we are. Pat and I sit down and say, this is where I think we need to go, and we decide how, what type of resources we can afford at the time to keep it up. But it's watched daily by me. But yes, Pat and I get along, we talk about it quite often. And IT has gotten involved, they help organize the most efficiencies and routes and things of that nature to put implementation in. Our struggle is customer service. We don't want a customer to be left. I'll pull a technician off a job to take care of a customer versus the IMI, so that sometimes is it too.
Did Neptune provide all your data presentation, data storage?
Did they provide a storage? No, we have our own.
So this is your own system?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
This is Neptune software, but we'll be storing a good amount of this in our own system, so we can mine it outside of the Neptune system to be able to do things even with the information that might go even beyond the Neptune reporting.
So you're gonna have 39,000 units reading every hour, every day of the year for...
Well, just to
your own
clarify,
data storage?
it doesn't send a reading each hour. It sends a reading once a day with a packet of information that has 24 hourly reads within the packet. So it uploads one file each day, and we have virtually unlimited server space to be able to store this information.
It's not a lot of space.
No, it
Yeah,
really isn't.
It really isn't, but I see what you're saying, is that we're getting that type of data, how much storage can you hold with all that information?
Right.
And there's schools of thought, and there's other things we can get into if you want, but, and how to retain this type of data and retrieve it in the
Or
future.
how
if
long do you
need
want to keep it?
Exactly.
Right.
But Bruce, I did want to make a point to you, and you talked about additional services, and yes, those type of things were always thought about as we were looking at systems, and I'll just use an example. You talk about a landlord. We find out, this one you can't see it as alarms, and depending on how you set it up, it will send a notification if there's water continuously and it's a leak, and we can make that hook to a landlord's cell phone if you want to say that 123 Main Street is running water right now for the past X amount of hours. So yes, I think to answer your question, those type of things, there's, and again,
It
when
can
you
spot
have all
high
this,
and low use.
when you have this data too, you can manipulate it any way you want. If all of a sudden it's higher than average, you can possibly send another
Is
text out.
this in the cloud, or are we keeping it on our server?
This is our server.
And
Yeah.
we back up our server?
Well, that's
I
something
believe
that
that's what we're working on now.
Mitch isn't here. I was going to ask for an operations committee to give a demonstration of what we're doing for cloud backup. Because we also, as part of our disaster recovery, we also now have plans worked out for external phone and all external accessing of our system to go off-site, but we're getting at the cloud backup right now, so.
So are we doing this ourselves, or are we going to a company?
I thought you were
That,
a company, didn't you?
yeah, there's an outside company doing it, and there's actually 2 server farms that are involved in this. It's like a 3-party arrangement, but That's why we wanted to get the operations committee together sometime in the next week or two to go through this with them as well.
Who's the company doing our backup?
I don't know off the top of my head because we're just at the beginning of it right now.
Okay.
And there
I mean,
were
is
several
it through
proposals.
Neptune, or are we using our own?
No,
third-party?
not, it's totally outside of this. This is just the meter reading software that's doing it. But for cloud backup for all of our information, we're looking at something completely different.
You mentioned user portals. Is that your plan, to give every user a portal into the system?
Yeah, so they'll be able to log in, look at their account. If their bill is high, instead of calling us and saying, why is my bill high, they'll be able to go see. And just like Steve said, he filled his pool that day, and they'll be able to see that themselves. Eventually, this information will also tell us if there's a backflow, if the meter ran backwards. Then we'll know if there was a water main break, that we actually emptied someone's plumbing in their house. And that'll be helpful information for, determining boil water advisories and things like that.
Yeah, those type of things, as I said, engineering tools, if all of a sudden you find out that there's water going into a section and the usage isn't equaling out to that, that you can perhaps determine there's a problem before it comes to the surface. Again, it's just some more pictures, shows my water usage and how it's going up. And these are just pictures I'm just gonna throw out there. This is how the antenna's mounted. This is putting one of the poles up with power. And the power going to it, trenching it. Device outside.
Are we able to test monthly billing in any sections, or are we gonna wait till it's fully in place?
Well, that's something that we thought we'd come back to the board to talk about as we had a little more implementation. Once we have entire routes done, where we don't, because right now we don't have a lot of complete routes done, so we're still doing some manual in some areas.
So we're waiting for some.
But once we hit a critical mass, we'll be able to talk about whether we want to start phasing in monthly billing in certain areas where we're able to do it. And we're probably not that far away from being able to do
I
it.
really don't think we are. I mean, if that's something you really want to focus on, we can make that happen.
I'm just thinking of a testing,
Right.
just to see how it works. Customer feedback, do some surveys.
Sure.
Communications, get some sense of how people react to it.
Yeah. This will be a great engineering tool as well, because if we have a pump station that we know serves, let's just say 140 homes, once the pumping mechanism is metered and the 140 homes are metered, we'll be able to look at the 24-hour snapshot of what we pumped and how much went through the meters. And if there's a discrepancy, then you're leaking in the pump system somewhere. Right now, because we only read those people on a quarterly basis, there's no way to ever do a comparison like
So
that.
Riskity becomes a.
This can be a leak detection tool as well, so there's a lot of great engineering data comes out of this system. So,
Anything else? That's it in a nutshell.
thanks, Steve.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Anything else out of operations? You've got them coming in on what you were just talking about?
Other than the item that got voted to come before the board, I don't really think there was a lot that needed the board attention.
All right, then
My
moving
recall.
on to the executive director's report.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't cross out anything else today, but to get to this point.
No,
All right.
we're on track.
Just checking.
First thing I want to mention is, as you all, I think, know, we received a grant from the state to do a study for consolidation and regionalization shared services for western Oneida County. It involves 3 water suppliers, which is us, the city of Rome, and the city of Oneida, and then 3 additional townships that are users, which is the city of Sherrill, the town of Verona, and the town of Vernon. And so the study is to just look at all the resources, see if we can figure out the best way to provide water solutions out there and some combination of optimizing our resources. The RFP was drafted here. As you may recall, the Water Authority is the lead agency to accept the money. Therefore, anything that's going on will be awarded by this board. Dick Goodney and Liz DiGeronimo did a great job of drafting the RFP to go out to consultants to determine who might do this work for us. That's out there right now, and the results are due back in just a couple of weeks in mid-July. Excuse me. We'll have an evaluation team here, but we'll also be meeting with the other parties that are in the consortium that I mentioned, and jointly we'll all look at it and determine what we think the best proposal is going to be, and then that would come back to this board. Our goal right now is to do that for our August meeting. So hopefully in August we'll be awarding that study, and then at that point it'll be another 8 to 12 months before we have a good, solid result on what the study's going to be, and we'll see what it tells us after that. Just wanted to give you an update. So for the August meeting, we should have those results in. I'll save this one for last, I think, on the Port Town permit. But a couple other quick things. You may know that we have had a kind of a looming issue that we've known was coming way back when, and that is that when this authority was created, we had a bonding limit of $100 million lifetime bond issue. So that means whether it's paid off or not, if it was issued, it counts towards the $100 million bonding cap. With all the things that we've done over the years, and particularly with the unfunded federal mandate on the drinking water regs that caused us to spend $30 million between 2006 and 2010 to build a bunch of tanks and make changes to the treatment plant, our total issuance right now is about $82 million. So we would have been probably bumping up against that in the next couple of years as we go through our normal cycle of bonding and capital improvement program and doing some transmission work. But what was a concern to us was that if we're marketing the region for a microchip plant, we know that there are a lot of major improvements we need to do to deliver that quantity of water, namely 22 million gallons a day, to that site. And a little while back, we retained an engineering firm to look at that, and have priced it out as somewhere between $100 and $120 million of improvements that we'd need to do if a company came into town and did a full development at that site. The good news, before anybody gets scared, is that based on the water sales to the site, the sales would not only pay off the debt service on those bonds, but also leave excess revenue. So what all that means is that if a chip plant came here, even doing that level of work, we would not have a rate increase that everybody else would have to pay to accommodate this company. The problem was the debt limit itself. And I think at this point it's appropriate to thank Assemblyman Anthony Bradisi and over in the Senate, Senator Joe Griffo, who both introduced legislation in both houses of the legislature to address this, and it has now passed both houses and will be awaiting the signature of the governor to be formalized. But they've increased the debt limit to $150 million. We had asked that they change the basis of the calculation from outstanding issuance to outstanding principal, so that as we pay some down, it opens up room for that. They didn't want to do that. They said specifically, we'd rather have you come back. But what they did do was, we had asked to exempt anything necessary to support the semiconductor plant or other large manufacturing facility, that not be counted, because that's underwriting economic development, which is good for the community. Rather than exempt it, they created a separate bond limit for those issues of another $150 million. So it covers what we think would be our, on the high side, anything we'd need to do to support the semiconductor industry, separate from the main bond limit. So if the main bond limit is really just to do our ongoing improvements that we do each year, water main rehabbing and things like that, we should be set for a pretty good long time, I think. And that's an issue that we knew was a concern. We've told the semiconductor industry we'll do whatever we need to accommodate them to come here, and we have the legal authority to do that. So again, thanks to our representatives in the Assembly and the Senate for helping us out on that. Another little issue I'll touch on very quickly, we have our workers' compensation insurance is with a carrier known as PIRMA, Public Employer Risk Management Association. We had been with them for a number of years, a few years back. We were in PIRMA for 8 or 9 years. And then with some pricing competition, we got out of PIRMA and went to some private carriers, and more recently the State Insurance Fund. Last year, the state fund was going to increase our premiums by $90,000. We shopped it back out. We went, $80,000, excuse me. We went back to PIRMA. PIRMA was an increase over last year's, but was $50,000 less than what the state fund was going to be. So now we're back in PIRMA. We were informed by PIRMA just in the last few weeks that the State Workers' Comp Board has now told PIRMA they're not allowed to serve public authorities like us. PIRMA has attorneys that are fighting that. Ken Bobrow was involved. We had a couple conference calls and emails traded back and forth with PIRMA and their attorneys. And what it really comes down to, what the state board was citing was something in the state workers' comp law, Article 15A, that said that PIRMA can only serve entities that have taxing authority. And so we've told them that the ability to re-levy property taxes onto bills is sort of an indirect method of doing that, but it's something that we do every year. In fact, we do it twice a year at different times. And so that's now gone back to the Workers' Comp Board, and the attorney that presented that thought that it was at least received with an open mind and promising. So the alternative is, if they reject that again, we could be forced to switch workers' comp carriers very, very quickly. One email said July 1. I don't know if we can do it in that time frame, but if we had to, I guess we would do that. But what it means is that we could be faced with the prospect of having a hole in our budget that we then have to deal with between now and the end of the fiscal year, because we may have much higher workers' comp premiums forced on us by the state. And I just wanted to alert you to that now, just in case we do run into a budgetary concern. We'll keep you updated. I think, optimistically, maybe the workers' comp board will decide that the explanation we've provided is adequate and we can stay where we are. The mid-ground would be they'll let us finish out the policy year through December 31st before making us do something different. So I'll keep you posted as that changes. I was going to ask Rocco for a date for the Finance Committee, but we'll do that by email, I think. And I wanted to get the Budget and Finance Committee to meet to talk a little bit about the timing of our fiscal year. We mentioned in the past that it might be worthwhile looking at maybe changing our fiscal year for a whole range of reasons. And now would be the time, I think, to start talking about that if we wanted to make that change going into this fall. So I'd like to ask Sue to maybe set up a Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and obviously anybody else that has an interest in it and wants to discuss it. Another thing I want to mention is that the AWWA, the American Waterworks Association, has a research foundation where they take the lead within the water industry of promoting research in different areas that they feel, based on their membership utilities, there's a need. And so a lot of great research has come out of that foundation, and they've put an RFP out recently to look at the use of granular activated carbon, which is what we've switched to very recently, and ways to optimize it so that you can cut your disinfection byproducts. And in theory, this research could show how we could conceivably reduce the cost of that to us. You may recall when we implemented carbon at the treatment plant, it added about $1 million a year to our annual operating expenses. This year, I think the contract was around $920,000. Connie, does that sound right?
Yeah.
About $920 this year, where the bids just came in about a month ago for the carbon this year. It's very expensive, and because Dr. Schreppel in our water quality department and her staff has been so proactive in engaging in research with outside parties over the years, not only have we had access to all kinds of great equipment, but a lot of benefit from studies that we've participated in. A study was just requested by the Research Foundation using a couple universities. In this case would be tag teaming with a firm called Hazen & Sawyer, a private engineering firm, to take a look at this. They reached out to Connie and asked if we wanted to be involved in that research. There's two levels of participation. One would be to just provide service in kind in the form of giving them data, and they would use this generalized data to set some general guidelines for the industry. That information maybe could be helpful to us in a year or two or three when the research is done. Another level would be to do direct participation, where they'd actually use one of our sites as a test site, so that the research they're doing would be specifically geared to our treatment plant, as well as a few other member utilities that they want to gear it towards. That would incur some cost on us. It's estimated right now that it would be about $15,000. But for the $15,000, we'd be directly participating in research with Hazen & Sawyer, NC State, University of Boulder, Colorado, and University of South Carolina to do research that would be directly tailored on our plan. The benefit could be that there'd be ways to optimize our use of the carbon and maybe cut our costs significantly. Now, having said that, I will say, though, that Hazen & Sawyer and this team is going to be one of many proposals that would be submitted to the Research Foundation. The Research Foundation will then pick the winning proposal. So there's no guarantee that their proposal that would include us potentially as a participant is the one that's going to be accepted and awarded by the Research Foundation. But I think what I'd like to get some sense from the board is, Connie and I have discussed it, we think we should participate either way. We could participate at the base level, which is simply our staff time providing data on our usage, or we could make a small investment and have that research tailored directly to our plant, which we'd like to do. But we just got this information very recently. But they'll need to know if we're going to sign on at one level or the other before they would go ahead and submit this as a full proposal. So if you agree that that use is good, then I guess I would just wanted to seek the support of the board before I commit money to this study.
I think we've benefited from all the research that has happened in the industry, and we've benefited from the fact that our scientists have been specifically involved. The board has a forestry fund, timber fund, that it restricted, and I think that would be a very appropriate use of this. It's already available, it wouldn't impact the budget, and if it's needed, and obviously the finance usually, if they're able to manage it within the budget, they do, but if it has to come from somewhere, I think the timber fund's a wonderful opportunity.
Is that a motion, Bruce?
Yes.
I'll
Is there a
second.
second? Any further discussion on Bruce's motion?
Well,
or
I think it should
request?
be funded regardless of
Right.
where the money
Yes,
comes
I
from.
agree.
I think the study should be funded. I think it's worthwhile participating.
Do we have
That's
funding spot in the budget where?
Yeah, I think, Dick, we could probably find something in the capital program that exists now. There's a certain amount of money that we use for, smaller items like this. And we could switch it around. If things are very tight, then, I think the suggestion of
I'm just saying that the funding's available.
timber,
if
yeah.
we want to improve.
And obviously, there's money in our reserve accounts for stuff like this as well.
Well, yeah, the reserve, though, has to be replenished.
Right.
Or the timber
Right.
fund does, or the capital.
So there was a second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
If it gets awarded, we'll let you know. Thank you. The last thing I wanted to mention is you may have seen in the newspaper, and I think we sent an email out to the board shortly after it happened, but the State Department of Environmental Conservation did approve what we were calling our four-town permit, which is something we originally submitted to them in 2002, and then withdrew when we got into the lawsuit with the Canal Corporation. But after the negotiated settlement with the state, we reactivated that permit. And just to refresh you, that was to cover the remaining portions of Westmoreland and Kirkland to the west, and Frankfort and Schuyler on the east. And many of those towns had some projects in mind. Schuyler did, Kirkland did. And the permit from the DEC now has accomplished the goal of expanding the geographic territory that now includes the remainder of those towns, which puts those four towns essentially on the same footing as other towns like Deerfield and Whitestown and New Hartford, where anywhere within those towns, if the town wants to take the initiative to extend water mains and create water districts, they can do so without having to get separate permission from the DEC. So those four towns are now included within our overall permit of the service territory and can go about freely doing projects without having to get separate permission for water supply.
How much additional area in Herkimer County was added?
Specifically in Herkimer County, right now, our mains really go just barely into Herkimer County and Schuyler and Frankfort, so it's a pretty good expansion. The four towns together, the remaining portions of those four towns constituted about a 50% increase in the total geographic square mileage of the service territory, which is another reason why DEC used a different process than the permit process, because they considered it more of a significant permit action because of the massive area. But it doesn't mean necessarily that all those areas are going to get infrastructure. Specifically in Frankfort and Schuyler, square mileage-wise, I don't know, but we probably only cover 5 to 10% of Schuyler right now and maybe 5% of Frankfort. So
And this would,
it opens up a lot of area for those towns to move forward and create water districts when they want to.
and do you know how much money was lost as a result of not being able to do this for 12 years?
The town of Schuyler had a federal grant from the Department of Agriculture. USDA is a funding program called Rural Development. Initially, the town had $800,000 to do work up on Graham Road, Smith Hill.
Oh, yeah.
They lost that money in a delay and had to turn it back in. They reapplied for it the second year and only got $500,000, and then they had to turn that back in. The town of Kirkland had a zero-interest loan from the state revolving fund of $1.9 million, which they also had to turn back in. So none of these projects are going to move forward without, the towns updating all their costs, because it's been now 10 or 11 years. The costs, no doubt, have changed. They'll have to probably update their environmental quality review, the secret process, and then obtain funding. And so whether they go back to the state revolving fund, apply for new grants, or go straight out with bonding is something that each town will have to look at. But again, there's going to be no instant expansion until these
No, I
additions
understand.
get
But
addressed.
in Herkimer County, now that the two towns in Herkimer County are available to be serviced in
Mhm.
full, but because of the delay, because of the fighting to allow us to do this, Herkimer County had originally lost about $800,000, plus their residents who were going to be involved lost the opportunity to connect to fresh water and to get off of well water as a result of not being able to expand the system. The total amount of water of which, if you actually had an eyedropper, probably would have been about an eyedropper's full in the reservoir. So all of this delay and about an eyedropper's full of water in the reservoir was Herkimer County has suffered. The people of Herkimer County, the government of Herkimer County, the towns of Herkimer County have suffered from this delay, in addition to the other side, Kirkland and that sort of thing, but particularly Herkimer County. And I think it was a crime to block this, which had a zero impact on anything related to the reservoir, but had a significant life-saving impact, in life-enriching impact as well in Herkimer
The
County.
town of Frankfurt also has contemplated a new water district, which they frankly didn't even move off the drawing board because of these delays, and now they're taking a fresh look at that as well.
Well, they can thank their Assemblyman Mark Butler for fighting us every step of the way for 12 years.
Yep. And all four towns, all the projects that were contemplated combined was about 90,000 gallons a day, and when you look at that on top of our average use of about 20 million,
It's an eye drop.
it was 0.5% of an increase in our total use. So whatever we take out of Hinckley Reservoir on a daily basis, if all these projects move forward tomorrow and hooked up, it would increase our daily draw from Hinckley by about 0.5%.
Well, we had figured it at the time, it was a shot glass.
Yep.
Yeah, right.
Out of
We
a
figured it was a
tank,
shot glass
yeah.
of water, that our impact on the reservoir output. And this was less than an eyedropper,
Right.
even related to that.
So the good news is the permit's out, and these towns are able to move forward. And, we are still open for business, and others are working very hard to, keep in touch with major players in the semiconductor industry. And right now, with the limitation of our treatment plant at 32 million gallons a day, the permit was fixed to do that, but can be adjusted as we, ratchet up the use. We believe it would be a fairly concise process to go all the way up to our full 48.5 million gallons a day, should, a developer come here and that demand is actually there. So we've cleared a major hurdle. It's a great thing for the region, and it's time now for all the squabbling to go away and some positive stuff to start happening. And on that note, I did receive a phone call from the supervisor in the town of Westmoreland. They are already interested in looking at possibilities out there, and Dick and I are scheduled to go over there a week from tomorrow to meet with the supervisor and the town board to just do some what-ifs, look at the map, and, see what's possible. And they're ready to get the wheels turning and start looking at some long-range planning. So it's good to see people back in a positive mode now.
Anything else,
Getting
Ben?
getting the bond limit raised and doing this four-town permit, I think are fantastic accomplishments, and the
Two
whole
major
staff
hurdles.
and Pat and Ellis should be congratulated for their efforts in making sure this all happened, because it took a lot of work, I'm sure.
Congratulate us when we get our 48.5 million gallons.
That'll be another speech.
So, some of you newer
Well, thank
board
you.
members don't know I had a full head of hair 8 years ago. Just kidding. Dick put in a lot of time on this as well, and it was a real team effort, especially the permit process. I mean, it took 14 months, and our staff had to respond to 20 or 25 questions that were all extremely detailed.
Good work.
So we
Have you
got
ever
great support
compared
from.
the numbers of questions and over these past 14 months, the volume of information you had to provide compared to other similar permits around New York State?
I don't know.
Well, there have been a lot of changes in environmental conservation law just the last couple of years. So a lot of these things we would not have had to do 5 or 6 years ago, and now they've made these changes.
I just think we would have not have to do it if our town name was Syracuse or Buffalo or.
Yeah, I don't know. That's.
Anything else, Pat?
The only thing I will say too, on the permit, is that because of changes in the law, it would not even be possible at this point for the towns to have submitted their own permits, because a major change in this is that the only people that can now put in water supply applications such as this is the agency that actually has the rights to the water source. So if another town decides they wanted to come to us and connect up, it won't be a town putting in a permit, it would have to be us doing it on their behalf.
Source the work.
Yeah. So,
Any questions for Pat? Any old business?
Yeah, quite some time ago, I think Mr. Coyne brought it up about having a tour for some of the new members. And that hasn't happened yet. I don't know if you still want to do that, of the facilities?
Thought we put a date out and didn't get a
We
lot
didn't
of
get a
response.
response.
Response was low.
We did
Well, we'll
circulate
put
a
it on.
date, but we could
But
try it
then
again.
I think that was in the fall, though, wasn't it?
No, I think we just tried to do it in April, didn't we? I thought we didn't.
I got this year.
We'll check it,
Oh,
we'll
okay.
put another one out.
Yeah, we'll put a date out. We'll put a couple dates out, and hopefully you can all come up. It's a great tour.
I still think we should be looking at a bus and a business after hours with the chamber. And set up something up there, put the bus in front of City Hall, and people can get on the bus, we take them up and take them back. You know?
I was gonna suggest it ended at our biggest customer.
Yeah,
And they might even do it.
Just to make sure that their supply is adequate.
That's right,
and check
that's
on
right.
their
And they're still
product.
selling a good
so
product.
you could follow it from the tap to the tap,
Well,
right?
but the
That's
idea,
it, good.
the idea of
We'll
doing.
work on that one.
The idea of doing a bus where nobody has to worry about transportation.
Yeah.
They just park here at City Hall parking lot, and we take them up and we bring them over to the brewery and bring them right
We
back.
can certainly take a look at that.
You know?
But we'll set a tour up for the board, for those of you that want to get up to the plant.
Anything else?
Yeah, one thing, I was on the website, and on our cover page, we have 12 members, we only got 4
Oh, we
photographs
need
there.
photos, right.
Yeah,
Well, we tried over the years
it's
and
been hard to coordinate the
It has
photos.
been
People
hard.
just, for some reason, haven't wanted to go.
Do it
but-
at a meeting,
Yeah.
get the photographer here at a meeting.
Well, we could do that.
Yeah.
Or we could just take all the photos down.
Line them up.
Seriously.
Get your iPhone out.
Get the numbers.
I'll bring my
Numbers.
numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, Bruce. Bruce will be the photographer.
I'll
All
take
right.
Anything else?
One more thing, but I think we're going to have an executive session?
No.
Oh, we're not?
Oh, that was going to be to discuss the four-town permit, but
There's no basis
there's
to
no
go in.
basis to do that right now, so.
Okay, well, all right, there's, we settled our, most of our union contracts. We still have one out, right?
Mhm. Yes, we do.
And we voted on our budget on that and our rate increase
Yes.
on that. So I don't believe there's any reason to give any new titles or any individual raises outside their contracts. This is what we settled on advice of the department heads. And I'm sure they knew what they needed at that time, and anything above that should wait till next contracts come up. I know
Well-
we have one guy now that's just part-time. You know, he's only doing a small job,
Mhm.
but,
Well, there's a difference between a raise versus changing a title to reflect job duties. And anytime something like that happens, it's something that goes through civil service where we have a specific need. If we're changing a title, that's outside of the union contract. There's nothing to do with negotiations.
Right.
And it's not because we want to give someone a raise.
right.
If there's something specific you want to talk about individually, I'll be happy to do that with you. I'm not sure the rest of the board wants to get into staffing,
Yeah.
unless it's a staffing crisis, in which case I would tell you.
No.
No. that's
Nope.
not an issue.
Anything else? Any new business? We're adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Nice work.
Why don't you give me a call tomorrow?
We're laying
Yeah.
down.